Well, welcome everyone to our third annual residential net zero energy conference. This is the second portion of that conference as we split it up across the year this year, across 3 different sessions. And so we're going to have another portion of it in September as well. And so again, this is the third annual one, so we're excited to have you back out here with us. We're going to be talking about net zero new home construction from 4 different homeowners who have or had attempted to do net zero in their homes and how and why they did it. So stick around. Real quick, if you're looking for you want your continuing ed, it's approved for several different CEUs as well as AIA, health, welfare, and safety. And if you're looking for that, please watch the entire session and the survey will pop up at the end. Please take that survey. We want to hear from you. Even if you don't need CEUs, we want to hear your feedback. And we got something new coming up for those of you who tune into our session. So we're going to be sending out some formal certificates. It may be a week late, but it'll be coming your way, so you will get your notice. And so, yeah, really what we're going to be talking about is how do we work with homeowners, building owners to go net zero? What are their big concerns? And just really hear from them, something a little bit different than what we normally do. And I want to say a huge thanks to the sponsors of our residential net zero energy conference, many who've been sponsors from the start. Obviously, Mitsubishi at the top there with systems like air source heat pumps for both new and existing homes. Enertech, which has GeoComfort and Hydron to help with ground source heat pump systems, or as you might know it, Geothermal, which by the way does have a tax credit associated with it now, if you didn't know that. And then Water Furnace as well, a fantastic geothermal ground source heat pump company as well. Reach out to them for getting your ground source heat pump needs. And then our friends Build Equinox Serve 2, smart ventilation system, helping to control your ventilation in your house and have the most optimal comfort. And then the Net Zero Build Virtual Summit, you can check them out if you want to keep the dialogue going on net zero. And then again, as always, DTE and consumers have been there from the start, and they've got some amazing programs to help across nearly the entire state to help fund your next net zero project. So we're going to hear a little bit from them about that as we're going on. And then I do want our planning partners to say hello and wave when I name you off, but if it wasn't for them, they've pretty much been there from the start. And so Michigan Geothermal Energy Association, Larry, go ahead and say hello.
Hi, welcome.
And then we've got Mika, the Michigan Energy Efficiency Contractors Association, David.
Welcome, everybody.
And then we've got the Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association. John, are you on?
Yep, I'm on. Great. How's everybody doing?
Hey, John. And then we've got Dave Dye, DFD Architecture LLC, who also is chair of our education committee and is our emeritus chair of our board as well. So say hi, Dave.
Thank you all for coming and for participating. Appreciate your help.
And then Michael, Architectural Resource, are you out there at all? He may be joining us a little bit later. He's out there. He's doing the thing. And then a newcomer who's going to be partnering hopefully with us to expand net zero from Illinois Green. Ashley, go ahead and say hello.
Everyone, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Ashley. So check them out. We're going to send out more information about these organizations. You know, if you're not a member of one of them, as well as GreenHome Institute, that's me, Brett Little, program manager here at the GreenHome Institute. If you're not a member of one of these organizations, sign up after this event. And if you're planning to design a project, get a bid from DFD Architecture and from Architectural Resource. They're going to help you go net zero. All right, well, that's the end of those slides. So I'm going to now hand it off to our speakers, who you're really here to see. And first up on deck, we've got Kate. And Kate, I'll let you quick introduce yourself, and then we'll hand it off from there. So.
Hello, everyone. I am Kate Miller.
I'm a grandmother and a mother, and then also an advocate for the environment and a community advocate. And I will be sharing about a house that I'm building, having built. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kate. And then Rob, will hand it off to you.
Good evening, everybody. Rob Dirksen. My home is located here in Michigan, in Saline. I'm a contractor, an HVAC contractor as well. So my home was established in the year 2000. And so kind of way ahead of this conversation about net zero. In fact, I didn't start the project as a net zero project, but we're working towards that as technology changes have come about over the last 21 years. But look forward to sharing with you some of the events of my construction and what we do in our industry.
Thank you, Rob. And then Larry, we'll hand it off to you.
Hi, I'm Larry Ponziano. I work for a company called Zender America. We manufacture energy recovery equipment, but I've been a contractor for about 29 years in this capacity, and have built 3 net zero houses and lived in 2 of them. And I built a unique build that is made completely out of steel, and it's low toxin, formaldehyde free, nearly wood free. So I'll look forward to talking about how I did that and why.
Thank you, Larry. And then our final speaker, Janetta.
Yep, my name is Jeanette Brummer, and I am a postmaster. My husband is retired, and we decided to build a net zero home that we just recently moved into the end of October last year. And we just saw the concept and wanted to be environmentally friendly and kind of got into it, and here we are now.
Thanks, Jeanette. All right. And then Larry, I think I skipped you. Michigan Geothermal Energy Association. Why don't you say hello to everybody too? Is another one.
I was the first one, Brett. Your memory is going.
Oh, okay. Okay. I did get you. All right, good.
Brett,
All right.
may I interrupt? May I interrupt? I'm looking at the chats and people are saying there's no sound and this video slide is black.
Yeah, yep. We'll just have to keep moving forward. Unfortunately, every now and then we have a few people who just can't see. They'll have to go through the technical support, I believe. So can you all see my screen and everything?
Yeah,
I can.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so for those of you who can't hear or see, you will need to contact Zoom or just try to log out, log back in. But make sure to contact Zoom support and we'll keep moving forward. So
Okay, thank you.
thank you, everybody. And we
And
will
make
be
sure
getting
the
to
video-
questions.
Make sure the video and audio are pushed on. I mean,
Yeah, that does help too.
basic.
Larry. So our first question, and we're gonna go in order here for the order we just went in. But our first a question to you, Kate, and to everybody that we're going to ask is why commit to something like this? Why do this? Why is this important? Can you help us out here?
Thank you. Yes, my desire is to show people that they can build small, age-in-place, sustainable, tight, and unique houses while saving the planet and having a small carbon footprint. We can build small, highly insulated houses, HVAC climate-controlled systems with mini splits, MERV 13 filters, and SERV 2 ventilation systems, and implement solar panels, geothermal, wind, and/or water for renewable energy sources. I've seen many new houses that just swallow the homeowner's green space. The property is left with very little breathing spaces. Some states' zoning commissions require that you build on only 30% of your property, but granted, some property is too small to use only 30%, but you understand the principle. I would like to awaken people's curiosity about building better. My builder is conservative with scrap wood, styrofoam, etc. Staying with a small carbon footprint to me also means purchasing products that do not have to cross oceans on shipping container ships. These ships are so large they could plug up the Suez Canal. Most of these ships run on crude oil or bunker fuel, which is very dirty. It pollutes the ocean and the air. And since I'm talking about small footprint, I'll just point out that this theory fits right in with this theory of circular economy. This is a shift from our take, make, throw away paradigm. So any product, and I'll talk about wood, has multiple uses until its life cycle ends. So a scrap piece of wood could be used for framing and then for scaffolding and then set aside, and it'll be used for other projects.
Great, thank you,
Thank you.
Kate. Now, Rob, on to you. Why did you do this? What can you tell us a little bit more?
Well, when we decided to build our home, it was really first and foremost is to build a better and a safer home for my family. We wanted to move into a community with great schools and someplace we could stay for multiple generations. Obviously, we wanted to be more self-sufficient and really not have to choose between comfort and affordability. So unlike Kate, our home is larger. We have a 2,800 square foot home with 2,000 square feet finished in the lower level. We've really taken a look at it, build what we needed to provide for our family, what we felt we needed to raise our family, and then make it as efficient as possible. So that's where our goal originated. And then I wanted to practice what I preach. Being 30 years in the HVAC business, I wanted to put systems in place and use products that would give me firsthand practical knowledge and show real world performance for our clients and our customers. And then of course, in the process here, do as best we can to leave the world in a better place for future generations.
Great, thank you so much, Robin. Larry, I'll pass it on to you. Why did you do this? Why is this important? Okay,
well, I think Kate hit something that was really near and dear to my heart, the whole make, take, and throw away. I've built about 300 homes in my earlier career, and everything I built seemed to be, in my opinion, it was always motivated by the least common denominator, how much it costs to build, how quickly you can build it. And it's kind of a disposable house, and we have a kind of a disposable mentality. And so I wanted to build a house that would manage moisture very well, and which I think is one of the largest reasons why buildings age and don't age well. And so not having an electric bill, a gas bill, a water bill, or a sewer bill was important to me, but making a low toxin house that would last multi-generations. And I really think my house will probably last more than 400 to 500 years unless it gets hit by a direct hit with the tornado. And so the life cycle cost would be considerably less than one of the houses that I built in my earlier career. So I have 34 months now without a gas bill or an electric bill or a water bill or a sewer bill. And so that's kind of like a byproduct of this. In some ways I feel like I won the lottery, but it's a very clean house. I have MERV 15 filtration, continuous ventilation with the Zender heat recovery system, as well as some other things I've done with activated carbon, and a super clean house. A takeaway, I've never had to dust anything in my house with the exception of the leading edge of my ceiling fan blades. They're the only thing that get a kind of a white powder, but I'm not making this up. I have never had to dust my house ever. It's amazing. There is no dirt in my house. So at any rate, but why I did it really was to try to prove that the proof of concept in reality could be done affordably, which I did it. I'm at $162 a square foot, which, so, I'm kind of a geek about numbers, and I've got a lot of numbers that show what I did and how I did it and why I did it. But the bottom line is that it works very well, and I was motivated. This is my third net zero build, but this is the first one that I've built to last for generations. So that's about it.
Thank you, Larry. And Jeanette, can we see hopefully it doesn't look like this right now, but can we see your house?
Sure. Pull it up.
All right. Yeah. So yeah, no snow, but Jeanette,
and no more Christmas trees.
Yeah. Can you tell us, why is this important? Why did you have your house
I think
constructed in this manner?
this slide here that says no electric, no gas, no water, no sewer was made for me, because that was our first thoughts going into this. We were building a retirement home, and in retirement you certainly don't have the same funds that you have in your working life. So we looked at building something that was going to be affordable for us in retirement, as well as low maintenance. Again, a home that we can live lifelong, hopefully right till the last day, because the goal is always to stay at home as long as you can. And there's no stairs, everything is one level, no steps. The only step I think that we have in the house is just the little lip that goes into the shower, and that's it. So we didn't want to have to live for a house in our retirement, and that's really why we looked at building one of these. But yes, that's our property.
Right. Yeah, great. Thanks, Casey. So I'm gonna pass it off to Kate now, and I want to make sure I've got the next question, but I believe it is the challenges, right? What are some of the biggest challenges and barriers or even opportunities that you saw that you can share with us in doing this?
Sorry, I was muted. Okay.
All right.
Yes, COVID was a very, very big challenge. It definitely cramped the building industry, and in some cases it affected workers. Supplies dwindled, just normal supplies that builders expect to find in the hardware stores were not there. So it made a huge impact. It also threw off much of the timing for coordinating the different experts coming in. So it created a domino effect. Choosing a hot water system was a bit of a difficulty for me because I would have preferred on-demand hot water, and it's just too expensive. So I'm ending up with a hybrid, which I'm quite pleased with. 50 gallons, and it's a 240 volt, and I don't know much more about that. Another challenge were the trees. So you can see on this slide, I used a pathfinder to map out where the trees would be blocking the sunshine for solar. The pathfinder allows you to see where the trees affect solar in different months. I had to remove some trees. We sourced this lumber for the house, so I have gorgeous floors made of red and white oak, cherry, and ash. And I have bookshelves and bathroom vanities made out of oak, and there's some cedar for some wainscot. There was going to be so much waste with the wood floors. My builder figured making the floorboards to be 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches would leave us with much less waste, which it did, and we have more wood that we can reuse. We had a predicament building round. As you can see, it's a round house, and you need perfect measurements. The measurements for the joists, for example, must be close to perfect. Every single joist in this house is a different size. So if you're 1/16 off, it's going to ruin the whole rest of the circle. For the exterior walls, if you see in the next slide, the wood was difficult to lay on the circumference of the house. So the carpenters scored the wood to be able to lay it tight against the circumference of the house. And yeah, there you can see that. The next challenge, we almost had an impasse, it seems like, with permit changes. The first one had to do with the Water and Sewer Authority. The second one had to do with the township and our solar panels. So the first one, the Water and Sewer Authority gave us the okay to have our sewer line go about 120 feet downhill, it's all gravity fed, to reach the nearby sanitation site. The line was installed on the north of the house, therefore. And as we began to set the path going to the site, the sewer authority came and they said, we can't lead the sewer line there. We had to go completely around the house to the other side, to the south side, to hook up the sewer line where they said the previous house that was torn down had been hooked up. In addition, now with the line being on the south side of the house, that runs right next to my well. So then they said you have to double encase the pipe at least 50 feet in order to seal the sewer line from the well. This slowed the coordination of other projects because we had to wait until the sewer people could come with the excavator and fix all of that. So we ran the line around the house, and then as you can see, up to the road. So where you see the orange stick, that is 370 feet. So if anything happens, I'm responsible for paying for those 370 feet if anything happens underground. The second impasse was the township and the solar panels. The township last fall okayed where we plan to put the solar panels, which are on the ground, not on the roof. And when they discovered it would be visible from the lake, I'm building on a lake, they told us we had to put the solar panels lower. So it really was not a problem because it looks better and it still works. But the principle behind both of these issues where they changed the permits is a real conundrum. I didn't understand that at all. The driveway was a struggle. Originally, there were plans for a separate garage, and then I wanted to be smaller and see if we could have the garage under the house. So when I learned that would be possible, we put the garage in the basement, and it looked like the garage, you'd be in a 10-foot deep tunnel, excuse me, tunnel to get to the garage. But as the earth was moved around while we were building the house, it turned out that we have a beautiful driveway and the garage is easy to reach. So those were our challenges and difficulties. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kate. Yeah, Rob, up to you. You know, what were some of the biggest challenges? What did you do to overcome them as far as your construction and, you know, trying to aim for net zero?
Well, I think one of the first things that I think we're finding in the economy now is the ability to find consistent information about technologies and trying to navigate our way through facts and myths. When I built my home in 2000, we had a really tight community. We were working with DTE Energy on promoting energy efficiency. And so there were a lot of experts within the energy realm and building science realm that we were surrounded with. So it was easy in 2000, or easier in 2000, to gain information from a source we felt confident about. Today, we have so much more information available to us through, you know, internet searches, but it's full of a lot of opinion. Some of those opinions are good. Some of those opinions are not tried and true. And I think in our community of trying to build different ways, it's difficult to weed through what's practical and not just but what's maybe possible. So that's I think one challenge today is to find the information and weed through fact versus myth. The second challenge, which kind of goes along with this, is finding contractors that don't just want to sell you what they have, but have what you want them to sell you or to install. And a contractor that's willing to listen to what your goals are and try to apply that with technologies that are either proven or being willing to take the steps with a homeowner that wants to try something new that's out there, it's commercially available, but maybe the contractor doesn't have the experience yet with it, but they're willing to listen. And so that's another challenge. And so a couple of suggested solutions to that is to really start when you're looking at implementing a project, beginning a project, trying to choose your products and people you're going to work with. Don't start with getting quotes. Start with doing interviews. Interview contractors to make sure that you have a relational fit. When you take on a big project of building a home, you're talking about a 6, 8, 12 month or longer relationship. And so you want that relationship to be built on a very strong foundation, just like your home. And if you're having to pull along your contractor to implement your dream, and that contractor has his or her heels dug in the sand, and you're dragging them along every step of the way and trying to convince them to think the way you think, that's not a good place to start. So I would start with interviewing contractors and just finding somebody who has your best interest in mind. Your goals are their goals, and you share a common end line, if you will, or finish line. And by all means, build your team before you break ground. And what I mean by that is, you may find a contractor that will do the general construction and be the general for your project. But I would encourage you also to talk to their team members, meaning their subcontractors. So talk to their HVAC people, talk to their plumbers, talk to their electricians, talk to their solar folks, and make sure that everybody that they've partnered with shares the same principles as your builder selection and your goals and your dreams for building, you know, a project that you can be proud of. And so that's kind of where I would start with the suggestions and challenges. So when I built, we implemented some new technology. I have an ICF basement, insulated concrete foundation. But I was working with a new company that was actually doing a steel frame with foam on either side to contain the concrete pour. This was not really commercially available at the time, and we were really early on in the process, so we had to go through some special engineering approvals from the building department to allow us to use it. It took a little more time, it cost a little bit more money, but it was a successful application of the technology. But unfortunately, their process didn't succeed in becoming mainstream. But there are a lot of insulated concrete foundation companies out there still today, which is another great way to build.
Thank you, Rob. And then Larry, on to you. You know, what were some of the biggest challenges? How did you overcome them with your project?
Well, you know, some of my larger challenges were human related, trying to convince adults to do what they said they were going to do when they were going to do it for the amount of money they promised to do it for. And I joke about it, but it's really true. You kind of have to ask them what month Thursday is it in when they're going to show up on Thursday. So about 3 or 4 weeks into this, my lead carpenter left because he had never dealt with steel before, and he had worked for me on dozens of projects. So I made a decision to build with steel. It's made 20 miles away. It's highly recycled. It's all recyclable. There is a penalty for building with steel because it moves energy very quickly, heat. However, there's a thermal break between the double wall and a similar break in the roof system. Very meticulous foundation system that has thermal breaks in it. And I wanted to build foam free. So the bottom line is I kind of reinvented the wheel, even though everything I built with was off the shelf. The way I did it was a little bit different. Building inspector, about a month and a half into the project, he told me my name is now Crazy Larry instead of Larry, and just did not understand an R112 ceiling and an R56 wall and R38 foundation and triple glazed glass and a heating and cooling system that was only necessary. I have 2,250 square feet and I only need about 12,000 BTUs to heat that house at 10 below zero. So it kind of went against what many of the conventional wisdoms were. And nonetheless, I don't think anything I did was really that difficult other than maybe the air sealing component of it and teaching a group of contractors, basically 3 guys. We framed it, insulated it, sheathed it, and roofed it ourselves. We did not do our own concrete, our own drywall, or our own, I did my own electric personally. I did the electric and the heating and air personally. So the brickwork was done by a mason. But what you're looking at there, that IntelliFabric is a smart membrane which stays vapor closed until 70% relative humidity and then opens to dry to the inside. And the bottom line is the biggest challenge is we're making sure people did what they said they were going to do in the way that you needed it done, because failure wasn't an option. Moisture would not mitigate very well. So I didn't even use rail drywall. I used a fiberglass encased gypsum product, which is commonly available for commercial projects. It's a waterproof drywall, it uses fiberglass. But so fire resistance, mold resistance, insect resistance, sustainability, and moisture management were the primary concerns of building an unusual residential project like this. And the long-term benefit of this ultra strong long life cycle is kind of a byproduct of that. And I think that was my biggest challenges were simply that. So.
All right, thank you, Larry. So to finish off this question, and we'll take you into Jeanette's home here, but Jeanette, just tell us a little bit about what challenges you were aware of or that you ran into with your project, and what did you do to overcome them?
Well, it doesn't seem like my challenges were near what anybody else's were. Our builder was very good at taking care of most everything that came up. The only things that we were responsible for that we dealt with outside of the building of the house was we live in a floodplain. So we had some hoops to jump through for the DEQ to raise up our building site so that it was actually 2 foot above the 100-year floodplain, and getting all the surveys and such that went along with that. And not only that, we had to deal with FEMA for the flood insurance and the surveys that also corresponded to that. And dealing with FEMA is just nigh impossible. If we hadn't had a great surveyor, I don't know how we would have got through it, truthfully. But as far as personally, I mean, as far as the building goes, everything seemed to fall in place pretty easily, with the exception of maybe COVID delaying the actual start of our project. We were scheduled to start in March of 2020, right when everything shut down. And the builder wasn't able to actually get started until May. So we had a little bit of a delay in that respect. But as far as materials, we were very lucky to get in just before all the materials started to become scarce. So that worked out pretty good for us. The only other issue that I recall having was when it comes to appraisers for these kind of homes, banks don't always understand that appraisers have to know what a net zero home is and to know how to do appraisals on them. Just your run-of-the-mill Joe Blow person from the draw at a bank isn't going to be able to appraise appropriately a home that's built to this standard. And so we had some difficulties getting that across and getting our appraiser to the point where they could properly appraise what we actually had. So that to me seems to be the only issues that we ran into. Of course, we had a very excellent builder, and he handled almost everything that came up. We made decisions along the way, and there may have been things that we changed, as things went, but I wouldn't say there was major issues with licensing or permits or anything like that I recall.
Great, thank you, Jeanette.
Mm-hmm.
So we will move on to our next question here. And let's see, I might have, here we go. So then the next question is, and I think some of you, spoke to this a little bit, that's for sure, in your last question. So maybe you can elaborate or add a little bit more, from your project. But it's really going back to the beginning of your project as you're like envisioning it, right? And thinking through, who it is you're going to hire to do this work, right? That could make or break anything. And what kind of criteria you put forth, what kind of challenges or opportunities you saw within bringing on your contractors, and how many of them you had to hire, whether it was just the GC and they hired everyone, or whether you got involved in bringing on any of the other trades. So Kate, I will kick it back to you to start us off on that conversation.
You're on mute.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I found my architect, Mark Miller's Zen Architecture, when I was looking for an architect knowledgeable about green homes. And so I kind of made a circle going Battle Creek, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, and then finally Detroit and Chicago. And that's also when I learned about Passive House. So he designed the amazing looking house that you see. And my architect and I interviewed 2 builders / contractors in my area. One was not at all interested in the environment and not at all interested in the owner's pocketbook. The other one, Paul Abueva, lives being green. The materials he uses are green. His method of building is green. He's meticulous, which you have to be very meticulous building a passive house. For example, only when the wallboard installers came did we need a dumpster. Other than that, all the materials, the wood especially, have been piled and they reuse much of the scrap wood. The styrofoam scraps are used or recycled. I did not know that you could recycle styrofoam, and you can. Their machinery is either electrical or it runs on rechargeable batteries, no gas, from drills to snow blowers. And Paul even went so far as to put in recycle bins, which you see, and to help the outsourced workers adhere to our requirements. During the build, Paul has hired another builder, Bruce Johnson, to keep us on track and find sources for materials. They work well together. Both builders are very up to date on insulation, building passive, diligent about perfection, and keeping it green, keeping it clean, to quote Snoopy the Red Baron. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Rob, so, what was some of your experience from the contractors you chose?
Well, I general contract home myself. When I built the home, I was working with a friend of mine that was a licensed builder. So I knew the building process. I had a lot of relationships within the industry. So I acted as my own general contractor. So at least there I had one person to blame if something went sideways, and that was myself. For the trades that I did hire, I hired them based on their willingness to execute my plan. And it's interesting because it's some of the little things, and Kate just mentioned some really I'll say over the top execution by a builder. That's amazing that they take the care that they do when it's not their home. That's a good testament to a good builder. But things like a plumber needing to do a hole penetration for a pipe that needs to go through the exterior envelope, and I actually provided hole saws of the various sizes so that my plumbers and other trades wouldn't cut square holes where round pipes had to go through. I spent a lot of time paying a great amount of detailed attention to my envelope and air sealing. And so that was kind of one of my pet peeves. The geothermal system I self-installed. It's a 5-ton geothermal system that does both forced air and radiant in-floor heating and cooling. The water heater has been upgraded since the installation originally to an air source heat pump hybrid water heater. My solar was actually installed only 10 years ago. I've got a 4.6 kW solar array. That was self-installed as a contractor. We were venturing into solar PV, and then our electrician liked it so much he went to work for a solar installer. So that kind of came along after the fact because it wasn't quite ready for prime time in 99 and 2000 when I was building my home. So again, just going back to contractor selection, it's about relationships and people that share your goal and have the desire to execute your plan.
Rob, before you go on, the average home in Michigan has about 80% air leaks per hour. What's your air leakage in your house?
My measured natural air changes per hour is 9%.
Thanks, Rob. Larry, tell us a little bit about your experience with contractors, who you worked with, who you hire. What are your thoughts?
Well, I had basically 3 major contractors other than the dirt work people. I did have to cut down almost 3 acres of trees. My driveway is 550 feet long, plus the footprint of a house and a barn. It was very disheartening. I couldn't find anybody that wanted to harvest those trees. I mean, nobody. I called people from Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan, and we had a lot to do with timing. We had 3 solid weeks of rain. It was just too wet to get in there. So I had the trees cut down by a tree cutting service, if you will, and they left them all for me, and I gave them all away for firewood, and I ground up all of the branches, and I used them to blanket a trail network. I have a trail network through my property. I have 10 acres. So that was to my advantage. And then a couple of the larger ones were used for wood. So you're looking at the inside of the house. The house is one of my regrets is I wanted polished concrete floors, and I could not find anybody that was willing to do the kind of floor that I wanted. And I've seen it many times. I mean, everybody I called, everybody I talked to said, oh yeah, we polish concrete, but I couldn't get anybody to do it when I needed it done because I needed the floor done. So the long and short of it is I went with a travertine marble floor, which is really not a sustainable floor. It is stone. But the whole house is designed for aging in place. I have a son in a wheelchair, so there's no steps anywhere, but I didn't want it to look institutional. I wanted it to look traditional. And I think I met that goal. Raising the ceilings like I did, they're as high as 17 feet in some places, was a compromise, because I think a lot of people think that you can't achieve high performance, but I'm living net zero. My heat loss and heat gain are well controlled. I'm at right around 1 air exchange an hour at 50 pascals. And it could have been a little bit better, but if you look at the back of this picture, there are 5 French doors, and 3 in the living room, dining room, 1 in the master bedroom, 1 in another bedroom. And all of my leakage is at the base of these doors. They're triple rubber gasketed windows, tilt and turn, European style everywhere else. But I couldn't come up with anybody to help me replace I just haven't done it yet. I'm really not unhappy though. I have my leakage is 1/3. I'm sorry, it's 2/3 better than just about everybody else in the country. So so I was my own contractor. I guess I went off topic there. Sorry, guys. But the contractors I had to use, the bricklayer was fantastic. A bit odd, an eccentric individual. He fired 3 people while on the job because they didn't meet his 3 helpers. He went through 3 helpers. He was really picky. He would start at 6:30 in the morning, and if somebody was there at 7 o'clock, he'd fire them because they were a half hour late. And he went through 3 helpers, but turned out the brickwork is impeccable. Drywall work was a little bit tough. This fiberglass face drywall, I went through 2 drywallers because the first one quit. He didn't like it. So I'm not sure if I answered the question. I was my own contractor for everything except 3 major things, and then the dirt work. So.
Yeah, no, that was perfect there, and you clearly had to hire yourself and motivate yourself. So, and I think there are many people who are going to be doing that. So I appreciate that. So, Janetta, I will turn it over to you. I know our value. I know Jake very well. How did it go through the process of bringing him on board? Was there anyone else that was involved? Any designers that you hired? Or tell us a little bit more.
It was a painful process until we met Jake, truly. We had, we went onto your website, the GreenHome Institute, and you have a beautiful listing of contractors there that build net zero homes. And we started at the top of the list and started interviewing contractors. And we found out rather quickly which ones were willing to work within people's budgets and which ones wanted the cream of the crop jobs out there for the millions and 2 millions and gazillions of dollars that you can put into some of these things. So after interviewing probably 2 or 3 builders and getting a little frustrated, I think we talked to someone in the GreenHome Institute aside from yourself, and I can't remember his name, but he suggested Our Value Homes. And so we called Jake, and I think Jake interviewed us just as much as we interviewed him. And we had blueprints made up for the house that we wanted to build. but we wanted to take that house and make it a net zero house. And he kind of looked at us and went, yeah, that's nice. And we'll put all that aside and here's what we can build for your budget. So we basically sat down and on a piece of paper, scratched out what we were going to build. And then we in turn had new blueprints made up. But he was very patient along the way, and he was a great contractor, and we were very fortunate to find him. But in the beginning, it was a rough process. Thankfully, we only went through 2 or 3 interviews before we found him, and it worked out great from there.
Thank you for sharing that, Jeanette. I
Mhm.
totally forgot that you made that connection through us again. So thank you for reminding me of that. And makes me feel like I'm doing something good out there. So.
You're doing a great job.
All right. So I think one of our final questions here, and again, I think a lot of you picked on many of these items, but maybe if there's a couple or 1 or 2 that just really stick out that you can summarize here before we dive into the formal Q&A section, is, just were there any lessons learned, or is there something you would do differently, or really as Larry from Michigan Geothermal Energy Association always likes to remind me, would you do it again? More importantly, so Kate, I will hand it off to you first to tell us what your thoughts are.
You have to unmute, Kate.
Thank you, Janetta. That was my notes. Okay. During the construction, we've had zero waste, which I'm just so impressed with. So we did not need a dumpster. A learning curve for me was that almost all of the wood scraps and styrofoam board pieces have been reused for other projects, other houses, and or recycled. And I learned from my builder to be even more diligent about recycling, about saving energy and different materials. The styrofoam, at first I refused the styrofoam because it doesn't break down. In other words, it needs to be recycled, it doesn't break down. But then I realized, oh, wait a minute, that's exactly why it's recommended, because it won't break down. So that was, and then in the walls and in the ceiling, we have blown in cellulose. So the walls are 14 inches of cellulose and the ceiling is 24 inches of cellulose. Handling climate adversity in a house with no walls and no roof. To keep the batteries warm, they built a little house with a little bit of insulated wood to keep the batteries while they were charging them. They kept the caulking warm by putting it in a heating pad or in an insulated sleeve. Choosing a countertop was another reminder of how to build with a small carbon footprint. I learned that my round counters would create a lot of waste if I used a traditional solid surface countertop. So Paul suggested looking at a concrete countertop, and the wood mold for the countertop can be reused, so there's no waste. When the blower door test came due, another learning curve for me is Paul had the house blower door tested prior to blowing in the insulation to be sure the house was tight from the start. And that was unusual to hear. Patience building sustainable and round can take a little longer, but in the end, what we're doing is more valuable. We used particular wood for the flooring that had excellent weather protection. It could be wet for 150 days, and we needed it because we had so much rain. And then we used a really durable weatherproof siding, not siding, but wrap around the house for the outside walls. So it's been a wonderful enclosure. We don't have, as you can see, we don't have the siding up yet. Differently, roundhouse, I might not build a roundhouse if I were to do it again. I didn't realize that you couldn't put solar panels on there. You can't put gutters on. And that's about it. I love living in a lighthouse, I have to say. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Kate. Rob, you you know, you've been in your house for a long time, more than anyone on this call, so you can tell us, you know, obviously you get a chance to look around. I mean, really, what would you do differently now if you were building again?
Well, and that's exactly why I made this short list, because in 2 decades, you know, building science has just evolved, and it's exciting to see it. Would I build again? No, I wouldn't build again, because I'm in the home that I wanted to have for my family for generations. And I think from a sustainability standpoint, it's better for me to age in place and improve what I have here to the best of the technologies that are available today. But if I were to start over, there's obviously opportunities to continue to improve on the envelope of the home, more exterior wall insulation, more ceiling insulation, better house wraps and you know, air sealing techniques. Although I'm extremely tight, I'm really pleased with that. I would probably, when my current electric stove goes, by the way, I'm an all electric home. I was from the start, so electrification was always in my goal. But I would probably switch over to induction cooking when it's time to replace my current cooktop. Definitely, being at 20 years, we're at the point where we're beginning to investigate a new roof. And at the time we do that, we'll be looking at doing more solar along with batteries to march our way, hopefully, towards that net zero goal. If I had a different opportunity on the property, this property, I oriented the home so that most of my glazing was facing northeast to prevent a lot of solar gain in the summer. But by doing so, I miss out on the opportunity of passive solar capture. And so I would probably orient my dominant glazing differently, use shading and overhangs and things like that to keep my solar gain from summer cooling down. And then I would look at incorporating some trom walls for solar thermal. As a company, we were involved in a living building challenge home that Michael Clement was the architect on. And they've got a really fantastic feature in their trom walls that are collecting their solar thermal energy. And our geothermal system in that house is actually playing third fiddle, if you will, for space conditioning in the winter. Passive solar is first, trom walls is second, and then our geothermal only needs to come on if those 2 other systems are not able to keep up with the demand of the home. So those are some things that I would change. But again, I think from a sustainability standpoint, I'm going to stay right where I'm at.
Great, thank you, Rob. You know, Larry, I know you've been in your house for a while. You were on the, I think, 2019 Illinois Green Build Tour, so you've been at it, helping get the word out about this. You've been there for a little while, so just tell us, you know, lessons learned. What would you do differently if you were doing it again? You know, share that with us.
Sure. Well, a couple of things. I built there's a barn that's the same size almost as the house on the property. And I built the barn first. It taught me, there it is, that's the back of the barn. So I have a 13.5 kilowatt of electricity, which is way more than I need. I'm net positive. So I have a net metering agreement dollar for dollar till 2032 with my local utility. So they won't give me any money back for what I produce. So I put a hot tub in. And it keeps me right at net zero. I was at the end of the year, this year I was at $150 more than I made, and it carries over. Late this year, I'll be getting a Tesla car, and I will turn the hot tub off probably because I don't want to really pay for the energy. Maybe I will. I don't know. More solars. I don't have any solar on the house yet, so. But the solar panels you see below that are thermal, vacuum insulated panels. And they are for the barn, for heating the barn. And quite frankly, they're turned off right now because they make too much heat. I can't use that heat in the summertime. I need it the most in the winter. But it's kind of an experiment. This whole thing has been a kind of an experiment. Some of the things I would say, I built the barn first, and then we didn't actually start framing until late October. So I acquired the land on July 1st. Took me over a month to get the trees cut down and a road built to get into it. So I stopped construction in December and picked back up in late March. So this was a 2-year or a 2-season build. My biggest regret is that I didn't do it because I was homeless during the course of this. I had no place to live. So I lived inside this barn for 1 year. And my son lives 2 blocks away. So I had to go there to shower, and I didn't have any heat, and it was brutal. It was a brutal winter. It was a life's experience. So I would have scrunched it. I would have hired more people, paid a little more money, built it in 1 building season instead of 2. But you know, I'm fortunate. I got to do landscaping as I went. I mean, because I had 2 years, I stretched it out. When I moved in, I was done. I mean, I was pretty much finished. I mean, I'm always doing a little bit of landscaping, but so the experience itself was not a bad one, but I would have rather it been over a 2-year period than a 1 year. I mean, over a 1 year period instead of a 2-year period. And I was really fortunate that I did not experience the price increases of materials that many people have experienced this year. And I've gotten to spend a lot of my energy, for instance, I mean, so if you look at the durability, that roof is probably a 100-year roof. It's 24 gauge steel, standing seam, has a 40-year finish warranty, a 100-year life expectancy. The brick is pretty much bulletproof. My floors are travertine marble on top of concrete. So my drywall doesn't have any paper on it to mold. It's fiberglass, so it resists moisture. So all of those things add up to this house could last for hundreds of years. And maybe I should have made a little bit, I could have done a few things a little bit differently to make it a little more socially pleasing, like some dormers. And I could still do that. And maybe some columns on the front to make it look a little bit more traditional. But I'm not unhappy with the performance at all. It's very quiet in that house because the walls and ceiling are so thick. And you know, the things I would have done differently are more cosmetic than they are structural. By the way, somebody asked about heating and cooling. I use an air to water heating and cooling system, which is hydronic in-floor heat. And then there are 5 little baby fan coil units, 1 in each bedroom, 1 in the living room, and 1 in the kitchen or the dining room. They do make a concealed fan coil unit that you don't see. It's inside the cavity. It's a cassette, but they're like $3,000 a piece compared to $600 a piece. So if money wasn't an object, I would have concealed those fan coils so nobody would have known I had them. But at any rate, I think I covered everything. That is a geothermal preheater with a Zender Q600 heat recovery ventilator, and that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It uses only 18 watts of energy on low speed, which it is right now because I live alone at this point. When I have guests, I bump it up to medium speed, which is about 39 watts per hour. And then on boost for like an odor event, like burning bacon or something, uses about 180 watts for an hour, but I hardly ever run it on boost. And my temperature in my house is almost always between 71 and 73 degrees all year round. That's about it. I think you are muted, Brett.
Muted and no picture.
Yeah, so thank you guys. Thank you all. So Jeanette, do you, anything you'd want to do different, anything you see out there? I don't know if Jake will be listening to this, but hopefully you feel that you can speak honestly here.
I can. I don't think there's much I would do differently. We talked about the potential of maybe having more solar panels than what we did. We have 18 panels, possibly a battery backup system, which we didn't employ at this point in time. But other than that, the size of our house is perfect for us for our end of life plan. I think my only piece of advice would be when you're planning to build a house like this, we spent probably 5 years to get ourselves financially ready to do this. And we built in kind of about a 20% contingency to what we thought our budget was going to be. And that proved to be probably our saving grace, because as things change and as you make different options and prices of things change from the time you start out to the time you implement, there could be some surprises. But as far as builder goes, I wouldn't change it for the world. We love our house, and it's not, you know, a humongous mansion, but it's what we need, and that's what we built it for us. So
All
I think
right.
Jake could appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are at the end of our formal presentation. So I just want to let all of you know who are counting every second for the continuing education unit. You are all set. You are good to go. We got you down for that. So we hope that you will stick around for the happy hour portion, where we're going to continue answering your questions, your dialogue, your conversation. There is a ton of stuff going on in the chat there. And then there is an official Q&A box. And if you can just drop your questions into the Q&A box, it's better chance that I will see them in there. But I absolutely appreciate the dialogue and some of our speakers who have been answering questions in the chat box too. But if you want us to see the actual questions, put them back into that Q&A box. And some of them I'm going to get back to that some have answered. And so again, a huge thanks to all of our speakers who've been here later. Real quick, for those of you who are watching this, the recording this on the future on demand, head over to our Thinkific channel, take the 80% of the quiz with an 80% passing rate. And again, those of you watching this in the future can get your CEUs by watching that quiz or taking that quiz and passing it. I wanted to make an announcement that came across my plate today that I felt like I could not hold in. But there is a awesome solar showroom in West Michigan in Byron Center. And on July 10th, they're going to enter you into a drawing for a Tesla Powerwall and a 6 kW solar giveaway. So I don't know, a lot of you are calling in from all over the world, I guess. So there's probably a limit on where these folks are going to install. But for those of you in Michigan and especially West Michigan, I wanted to share this with you. I mean, someone's going to win a big free system here. So get on down to their showroom on the 10th in Byron Center, and maybe you'll win. Maybe you'll learn something. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Ross, who's a program manager on ICF on behalf of DTE and consumers, to talk about their special financing and funding programs. Just real quick, and then we're going to get into the Q&A, talking about what's available nearly throughout the state of Michigan to help pay for many of these things, these systems in place. And I'm real excited to announce just this week too, Consumers Energy made a huge announcement on very early retirement of their coal-fired power plants. And what that means in practice is those of you using ground source heat pump, geothermal air source heat pump systems going all electric, which is what we highly encourage, you by 2025 will reduce your carbon overnight as those coal plants close down and we go to better, less emission resources. So super cool announcement. And so Ross is going to tell you a little bit on how to pay for it. So Ross, please take it away.
Great, thanks, Brett. And good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining this evening's webinar. My name is Ross Igo, and I work for ICF, who is an authorized contractor for both Consumers Energy as well as DTE. And we do work with both utilities to help implement various residential energy efficiency programs throughout their portfolio. But as Brett noted at the beginning of the webinar, DTE and Consumers Energy do have some great programs. And so I did want to take a few minutes this evening to plug two in particular, the DTE as well as the Consumers Energy super efficient all electric pilot programs. So for first off, if you were not aware and are building or constructing a home in DTE and Consumers Energy territory, these pilot programs launched, DTE's did launch middle of last year. It goes through the end of this year, and Consumers Energy also launched actually just a few months ago in late May, and will actually go through up until June 30th, 2022. So literally a year from today. So these pilot programs are designated to work with builders throughout both service territories and help incentivize the builders to build super efficient all electric new construction homes. So both pilot programs are available to builders on the market rate and income qualified side. If you can go back to the last slide real quick, Brett. And in order to participate, builders must follow specific requirements. We must receive a participation agreement from the builder. And then also the builder must work with a home energy system or HERS rater who will be responsible and help submit both the preliminary and final energy model that the program teams will use to evaluate your application. And in terms of more technical requirements, homes must install a cold climate heat pump and meet a HERS score of 40 or less prior to PV being installed in the home. It also must incorporate several other energy efficient features as well as be all electric. So as I noted, there is contact information on the bottom of the slide for both DTE's program manager, Jenny Abraham, as well as Consumers Energy program manager, myself. So please feel free to reach out to either email. We'd be happy to set up a call and discuss your project and see what we can do to help support the project under these two pilot programs. And if you can just jump to the next slide, now getting into the good part, just wanted to briefly touch on the available incentives for both pilot programs. On the DTE side, market rate builders can earn $7,500 up to $9,200 for market rate all electric homes that meet the technical requirements of HERS 40 or less prior to PV being installed in the homes. And then on the income qualified side, builders can earn up to $20,000 for income qualified homes that meet those requirements. Incentives are based off of HVAC, water heating, building envelope, Windows appliances, and smart home technologies such as Wi-Fi enabled smart thermostats. So on the DTE, it's more of a la carte, choose your measures and be able to reach that HERS 40 in order to qualify for these incentives. And as I did note, the DTE program does go through the end of this year. So if there are any homes that are currently under construction or in the early design or in the design phases, please reach out to Jenny Abraham and she'd be able to help answer any of your questions. And you can jump to the next slide real quick. I'll just touch on the consumers pilot. So this was launched, as I said, in May, and we do have a formal kickoff event scheduled for July 14th. At 3 o'clock. So if you are interested in joining that, please feel free to reach out to my email. But similar to the DTE program, participants and builders in the Consumers Energy Pilot can earn $10,000 up to $13,000 for market rate homes and $20,000 up to $25,500 for income qualified housing. And as I said, it must meet those requirements of being all electric with a cold climate heat pump for heating and cooling, as well as meet that HERS 40 threshold before PV is installed. So these incentives are determined off of those requirements and based off the HERS rating and energy modeling that we receive upon the preliminary or proposed modeling, as well as the final modeling once the house is complete. And in order to help builders achieve that HERS score of 40 or less, we do recommend very similar measures to what you saw incentivized in the DTE program just a slide ago, such as cold climate heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, and placing an emphasis on a highly insulated building envelope on the floor or in the basement, on the basements, on the walls, as well as the ceiling. So if you just jump to the last slide, there's our contact information. I do know there's probably plenty of Q&A, so I want to give plenty of time for that, but please feel free to reach out to either Jenny or myself to help set up a call. And we'd be, like I said, be happy to set up a call just to discuss your projects and how the pilot programs can help support your efforts with all electric, super efficient new construction. So thanks, Brett. I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, Ross, thank you so much for joining us there. So I'm going to invite our planning partners to dive into this conversation. And I see a lot of questions, a lot of similar themes here. Obviously, when it comes to net zero, solar is a key feature. So maybe I think a lot of you spoke a lot to some of your solar systems. and what you're going to be doing with those. Kate, I saw, starting with you, some of the questions coming through on why you went with ground mount versus putting it on the roof.
Yes, I learned that on a round roof, you cannot put solar panels.
Right.
Well,
yeah, and and getting to round, I mean, obviously we don't see too many round homes around, right?
Yes.
And I know I saw a lot of questions on that. What was it? No question in your mind to do that, or was it? Did you have to go through some design iterations before you decided to switch from square or rectangle?
I started off with a snail shape. So it's always been round in my head. It's been a dream. I love lighthouses. And I didn't sway from that. But I didn't realize how difficult that is for the builders.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And Mark, I know you're on right now. I saw you answering some of the questions, and I don't know I doubt Paul's in right now, but Mark, if you want to, I could probably bring you in here too if you wanted to.
Brett, before we move on, can I talk about the DTE geothermal incentives?
Yeah, Larry. Thank you for reminding me. There was another incentive out there, right? There's too so many.
Well, there's never enough incentives. Let's be honest about it. When you're building these, every money you can get from the utility, I urge you take it because you certainly give enough back to them. So I got a call from somebody at DT, Matt Peklo, who told me that DT just about a couple weeks ago initiated a rebate for geothermal, the first time in 25 years. And it was $750 for air source heat pumps, $800 for geothermal, and $1,000 for mini splits. Now, not exactly, he wasn't sure why they came up with that number or not, but nevertheless, you add that to the federal tax incentive of 28%, which goes through this year and next year, it starts to make the economics better in making the decision or something to look at. And one point I did want to make, if you have a 20-year-old, 25-year-old, 30-year-old geothermal system, something you may want to think about is replacing it while you have the federal tax incentive, because if anyone can tell me what Congress is going to do 3 years from now, you're a better person than I am, because I haven't a clue. We don't even know who will be there. So right now you have a good tax incentive. You have the rebate from the utilities. It may be the right time to replace your unit rather than waiting 3 years before it dies and have none of the incentives. So I always urge people, if you replace a geothermal, they last 20 to 25 years. Rob can correct me if I'm wrong in that, but that probably will be the last heating system you'll need in your life or your home, unless you're very, very young. But it's something to think about, because if you have a 20-year-old heating system, it's probably not as efficient, and it's probably lost some efficiency over the years. So you'll probably regain it. So I urge people to think about it. Go to the DT website, look it up. We're excited about any of the rebates, and check with your utilities to see what rebates are available for any of the energy efficiency products we talk about. So that's
Great.
nice.
Yeah, thanks for reminding us of that, Larry. So there's a lot of questions here on certification, and obviously very important to ensure you're on track, to validate that you've made it. Rob, you've shared some interesting thing I think I overheard you talking about on the certification side, but maybe I'll just ask each of you and start with you, Rob, just to talk about some of the certifications your homes have received.
So as I mentioned, my home is an Energy Star certified home, and back in the day, I'll say it was just a different rating process, but the same level of detail went into making sure the home was certified. So air tightness characteristics, energy consumption, building components used, mechanical systems used, that all assess the point value. And as I mentioned, when I had my home rated, I was a HERS rater as well. I let my certification expire just because my business was taking a different direction. And there were a lot of community action programs that were kind of backfilling the gap of raters at the time. but they switched the rating system because they did have kind of a community that was full of raters that were not necessarily as educated as they are today. I work with a lot of raters in projects now, and I'm just amazed at the level of detail that they go to and how committed they are. They're in it for the right reasons. And I think back when I built my home, there were folks in there looking at this as a potential money grab. And so they changed the rating system. My home rated an 87 or 88 out of 100 at the time. And so now the scale is the better rating is a lower number. As pointed out in the DTE program, you have to be a HERS score of 40 or better before solar. So Energy Star certification. And two, I think it was Janetta had made the comment about finding appraisers. The only way to really prove the value is to have third-party certification. So if you really are committed to doing this, you know, partner up with a good rating organization that has a good reputation. Make sure you get certified, because that's how we're going to pull the appraisers and the lending institutions. And then, you know, at the tail end of this, the buyers along. If we sell our homes, we'll have justifiable value for what we've done. But it's a multi-step approach. So don't skip the rating process.
Thanks. Thanks, Rob. Larry, I'm going to pull you in here. Just, were there any certifications on your home? Why or why not? What made you choose those?
You're speaking about me, Larry, right?
Yeah, you, yeah.
Okay.
Our speaker, yeah.
So, other than my windows, everything would have met the CEUS or actually Passive House Institute. My windows were a 0.19. The leakage was a little bit too high on these French doors. If I would have went to sliders, European slider doors, it would have added $10,000 to the cost. And for me, it just was not worth it. So I have a HERS rating, including the PV. My HERS rating is a -34. Without the PV, it was a 6. So I will tell you, just from an anecdotal science here, I turned everything off in the house with the exception of the refrigerator, and I left the ERV running, and I did not use any heating, cooling, or domestic hot water for 7 days. Actually, it was 10 days during a winter month. You know, it was in the winter, and my house only went down to 64 degrees. So it doesn't lose. Heating and cooling is not my biggest energy consumer. It's domestic hot water. And, I went off topic again. I do that. So the only rating I have is a HERS rating. The only certification I have.
And I assume you didn't run that test in, what was it, mid-February, when we were getting hit with the, I don't know if you guys got it down there, but it was freezing here then, right?
Yeah, I did it. It was late December.
Oh, okay.
And nonetheless, 64 for me is too chilly. I was actually in Grand Rapids at the time, right. And I have telemetry in many places. I can tell you temperature, relative humidity, and several other things. I have sensors in the house that I can read from the internet. And then my son lives a few blocks away, so his instructions were, if I was ever to get close to freezing, he was to come over here and turn it all on. I didn't want to lose pipes or anything.
All right. Yeah. No, thanks for that. And yeah, Passive House, it's those windows sometimes it just throws everything off. But that's what we say: aim for Passive House, try your best. Something comes up, and that's a perfect example. I really appreciate that, because we say, if you don't aim for it, you don't even get you wouldn't even come as close as you did. So I think that's one of the goals that we talk about. And so I appreciate your example kind of showing that out. But I'm gonna pull you in, Jeanette. Was certification on your mind when you had your project built? Was that important to you?
It wasn't on my mind. I had no idea what certifications were at all. Jake took care of a lot of that for us. I can't list verbatim what they all are. I know that in my utility room, I have a plaque that says silver certified. So what all that entails, I don't know, but we have it. It's just not anything that I can speak to.
Sure, that's fair enough. I think that's part of the point too. Is it important? Is it something you need? So, and then back around to you, Kate. What kind of
Unmute, Kate.
certifications were you going for?
I was gonna make a sign that said
Thank
unmute,
you.
Kate.
Thank you. We are going for lead and passive house. I don't know, Mark, if you can help me on, is there anything else?
We are going to be passive house certified by CEUS, both for passive house certification and also net zero. And Paul is into the LEED program, so he's helping us get a platinum rating, I believe, for your house. And I think we are also going to get the net zero certification through the GreenHomes Institute.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, for tuning in. So there were a lot of questions about cost, and I know that it's tough, right? And then you're all of a sudden wood prices go up insane, and today I just learned they have shot back down 40%. So good news, but it's a roller coaster out there. But what can you speak to? There's a lot of you been answering on the chat, so I appreciate that. But what can you speak a little bit to cost and how that drove, some of your decisions? And I think, Rob, just on the cycle we're going right now, Rob, I'll kind of circle to you on that one.
Yeah. So when we decided to build, this was a stretch, right? To build this kind of home, we came for, this is my family's third home. We built one prior to this. We lived in one that was a pre-built home prior to that one, and we had a young family, so we were pretty strapped. So what we did is we sat down as a couple, and we just simply, well, let's say I made the list because it was my non-negotiable list. These are the things that are going to happen in this house come, what, in high water, right? And those items were all energy related items first. And I said, this is the budget. Obviously we have a budget to frame the house, and lumber is going to cost what it does. But then from there, insulation was non-negotiable. We were doing cellulose. The window package, we were buying the best windows we possibly could. So we just simply went through everything, and being in the trades and being in the HVAC, geothermal was a no-brainer. But we took that approach first, and then we came up with what is left in the budget for the niceties. I did not want to pay in a mortgage for any products that weren't going to last as long as the mortgage was going to last, right? So one of our sacrifices was countertops in the kitchen. So sure, we wanted granite, and we opted for Formica because that's what was in the budget, right? Styles change, so kitchens have been remodeled. I've remodeled our kitchen with new countertops. Now we have quartz, but that's cash out of pocket, right? I'm not paying a 30-year mortgage on a quartz countertop. Interior doors are hollow core doors with triple hinges, so I could upgrade those to solid wood doors in the future if I wanted to. Bathrooms, primary bathroom being the master suite, tile floor, we spent the money there, but we have an insert shower, so we didn't go whole hog on a $10,000 master shower. Secondary bathrooms were vinyl floors. We've upgraded those over time. So I think when you start a project and you put all your numbers together, and I used to do budget estimating for new construction, it's really important to clearly understand what's your priority and create that A list of these are non-negotiables, and then the B list is these are nice if we can afford to do it, and what are my sacrifices? Because if you're going to commit yourself to this goal of net zero or just being as efficient as you can practically be, then you've got to do that right from the start. And that's how we handled the discussion, and we had every item itemized. We built the home 1 day short of 8 months from groundbreaking to move in. and I was $10,000 over budget on a $300,000 budget.
There you go. Thanks, Rob. And Larry, over to you. I mean, what kind of factors or considerations come in with cost? You had mentioned, you know, sort of the passive house thing with windows, but anything else you can speak to?
Unmute.
There we go. One of the biggest things that was motivating me here was to try to keep a price parity to a traditional house, but it was impossible. But so here's what I did. I kept meticulous records, and compared to a traditional build, when I was done, I'd spent $54,000 more on a 2,250 square foot house. This does not include the barn or the land. Of that $54,000, the solar system was labor and materials, about $20,000 of it, of which I got a 30% federal tax credit. So I take the balance and I look at what I would have paid, what I predict what I would have paid for gas and electric had I had a traditional house instead of going all electric, what I did. And my return on investment, if you add the solar system in and to what I actually spent, I think is right around 10 years. It actually was like 9 years and 8 months. And I based this on the previous house I lived in, what I paid for gas and electric and water for the period I lived in that house for 11 years. So I don't know how accurate this is, but I actually kept a spreadsheet. And so the bottom line is I'm really pleased with the fact that I spent this $54,000 on a sustainable home that will last for generations. I did get a healthy tax credit, and I've never paid, I pay $14.65 a month for the privilege of net metering. And I did have to pay $4,973 upfront for electric. They had to put a transformer up, and I had to pay for them to trench, to pull the wire actually in that trench. So I don't know if that's really what you were looking for, but that's you know how I look at this is I justify it by that's how I justify it, is because I know there's a return on the investment. But another, I mean, it's very comfortable too. The house is super comfortable, very clean. I've tested my home for volatile organic compounds and formaldehyde and other compounds. And compared to the house I lived in prior, which was a new net zero house made with wood and spray foam, I have almost no VOCs. And for me, that's got a huge value.
Yeah, I really appreciate you, sharing the health aspect, because, what is the return on investment of having a healthier home and getting sick less or not having an issue? So, that's difficult to quantify. So I think your answer was great. And I appreciate you bringing in the health component to that. And maybe we'll, speak a little bit more to health too, as we go on through some more of these questions. So, Jeanette, when you came on with Jake, I mean, was it just, obviously you picked him for the reason he did what he does and his building method. Was there any concerns of construction costs to, add in some of the systems or solar, or was it, pretty easy choices for you?
Well, we identified early on kind of what we thought our budget was going to be, and he was very quick to point out to us the systems and the items that were going to be the most costly in building this kind of house. And during the build, it was just true to his word. The solar system, I think ours was 27,000, and then our rebate was somewhere around 23 or 24 at this point, because I think next year is the last year for the solar rebates. So we have a little bit of return on that. We had to put in an above ground septic system, which was more expensive than, obviously the traditional underground. So that was going to be one of our big expenses, and we knew that going into it. So once we got all that out of the way and then started the more mundane, paint, colors, flooring, countertops, all that kind of stuff, then, and we were ready to go. So we were not really that far off budget. Some of the things that happened to us were because of COVID shutdown, we had one of our vendors for our windows came to us and said, if you'd like to give us half of the money down now, we'll cut $5,000 or $6,000 off the price. And so we took advantages of things like that and were able to bring down costs in some places where we maybe overran in others. So I think our budget was, we started out with maybe 310,000 and we ended up total about 345. So we were over a little bit, but we were able to kind of finagle and negotiate for what we wanted. And I'd say that we got most of the things that were on our wish list. There was maybe a couple of things like the solar batteries that just were above and beyond, but I don't think we had that many issues with budget. Jake, I know you're familiar with him and his programs that he uses, but he was pretty spot on. And like I said, we got in before all the prices really roller coastered with wood and materials and all of that. So from the time he did his final estimate to the time we started building, we were pretty much right on as far as cost went.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And Kate, we'll circle back to you on the final part of that question with, and I know you're still underway, so I guess still to be determined, but can you just speak a little bit on costs from your end?
I'll speak a little bit, but not a lot. I'm looking forward to the rebates and the return on investment. My builder has saved some money just by doing just as good of a job, but with a little bit different tweak to some things that he's done. I've made some changes like switching over to a cement countertop and some other changes too. So that's about all I can say about that.
All right, fair enough.
Brett,
Well,
can I'm sorry to interrupt, but I thought I'd like to show something I thought Kate and Larry would get a kick out of. They talk so much about recycling and reclaiming and all that. A couple of years ago, I won a Lifetime Achievement Award for community service to the city of Detroit, and it was all made out of reclaimed woods. And on the back, it actually has the address of where in Detroit it was the building that they reclaimed the wood out of. So I got to meet the person who designed this, and it was with a poem by the Poet Society of Detroit. And I thought for an award, for an environmental award, I thought that was as cool as it gets to make it out of reclaimed woods with the actual address in Detroit of the person who did it. So I thought you guys kept talking so much about it. It reminded me about that. And I just thought I would share that with you.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you for showing that. That's great. And congratulations.
And congratulations.
Yeah, the nicest thing was I had no idea I was even nominated until I got the call that I won, which is kind of self-gratifying. Anyway, get back to the important stuff. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thank you for that, Larry.
I appreciate the address too, Larry. You can track it back and verify where it came from. So as someone who does verification all day long, I like that a lot. There was a great question in here.
The funny thing, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. The funny thing was I was in a subway in downtown Detroit, and the guy who actually built that came up to me and introduced himself to me, who actually did the work. And
hey, there you go.
Recognized me from the award ceremony, and that was really cool to meet the guy who actually created it. But anyway.
Absolutely. There was a great question here about existing homes, and I'm gonna paste it into the chat here for you all. But we did this conference, a third annual conference. We actually did this same kind of roundtable style for those who did existing home renovations, home improvements to get to net zero, including my own house, which is still being a scientific experiment for me. So yes, absolutely. We've got millions of existing homes around our country. We can never hope to build our way out of these problems. We've got to transform all of our existing homes. So I did post a link to that. You can check that out on our YouTube channel from before. So thank you for bringing that up. And I wanted to just make sure I answered. that question. I didn't know, I don't see too many other specific questions here. I've got a lot of different thoughts on my mind. I didn't know if any of our planning partners kind of wanted to chime in with some thoughts or observations you had for anyone.
Brett, I think you're doing a great job of kind of managing the conversation. I'm learning a lot today.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, Brett, I would just, from a perspective of feeling in a 21-year-old home. So I'm sitting here, and 21 years ago, I felt pretty proud of what we built and what we accomplished, and it pales in comparison to the projects like Larry and Kate and Janetta have taken on today, because technology has come so far, right? But I really, for the folks that are listening in on this, thank you for coming and spending your time. But I really want to encourage you to not be discouraged if you can't accomplish the level that some of the panelists have accomplished. I think it's really important that if we take care as a community, if we take care of the little space we have around our home, we reach out to our neighbors in our community, we're going to build a better world, even if it's a little improvement at a time. So just avoid the feeling of being inadequate. If you can't get to net zero, it's still worth doing what you can afford to do. And you can take a small step towards your goal, even if it's over time. And realize that technology changes. You're never going to have the latest and greatest product because it's always improving. But the cost of waiting is so much greater than the cost of doing nothing now. So I just encourage you to pick a project, pick something that fits within your budget, fits within the long-term goal, moves your needle towards that goal, and just be diligent, even if it's a little bit at a time.
So Brett, one topic I think I'd like to bring up is electrification. And for those of you who aren't aware of that, there's a lot of places in the country that have either banned gas to new homes, or like in Ann Arbor, where they have a goal to eliminate all fossil fuel by like 2030 or 2050. New York State just had a seminar on it. And the goal is to go all electric. Which is, as I said, Brett keeps talking about that, which certainly promotes the use of geothermal air source heat pumps. But it's a trend going around. There's a concern, one, for the environmental aspects of eliminating fossil fuel, and two, because more and more utilities are using natural gas to create electricity, that we don't want to create an unnecessary burden by using it also for new gas furnaces as well. So there's a lot, and all you got to do is look at Ann Arbor, which is spearheading in Michigan, but there's all over the country in places. There's a lot of utilities, including DTE, are looking at absorbing the use of geothermal loops as part of just like a gas line. If you look at it, what's the difference between a geothermal loop and a gas line that connects to your house? That should be part of the utility infrastructure. And it's better for the utility because that, the line is going to remain there forever, or 1,000 years, whatever, and create more use for, and it's a better use than shipping in propane and other things. So it's a topic that's something everyone should be aware of, and it's one of the most current trends. And if you hear the term electrification, I wanted everyone to be aware what that meant and what's going on. And well, you probably can find a lot of information on the Ann Arbor City website about that.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, Larry, and I don't want to pick on anybody, but was there anybody who does have any kind of combustion in their home and is willing to out themselves and talk about, why they have combustion? Any of our speakers, of our panelists?
No. Well, I have a wood burning fireplace, so that's my. Hi, I'm Rob. I'm a wood burning fireplace guy, and I do have a whole house generator for emergency backup power. Earlier in my career, I did a lot of travel, and I didn't want to leave my wife in a situation of trying to be powering the home with anything portable and hauling things out. So that is my that's my admission.
Well, and you make a good point on the, I mean, what have you had to, how often have you had to use those systems for outages?
We've had a few long outages, 2 and 3 day outages. I'm in the Saline area. I'm rural. I live out of the in the rural area, and so we are a little bit down on the list of restoration if there's a lot of outages. But we've been fortunate. I mean, it was a big investment, but the peace of mind and the security it gave me to know that I could travel and my wife was going to have, you know, the comforts of home that she needed and wanted while I was away was worth the investment.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. I mean, it is tough in a cold weather climate. You know, if we lose power in the summer, okay, sure. In the wintertime, it's a whole nother situation. It's a matter of life and death to some degree, though. I mean, you know, Larry, you told me a great, you know, you clearly have some what they call passive survivability. You mentioned 10 days at 64 degrees. You know, you're going to make it okay. You're going to be uncomfortable. So I think you and maybe you want to add to that from this context, but you know, Kate or Jeanette, I mean, what do you do in an electric home when you have an outage? Have you thought through that at all?
Can out myself. We have a wood burning fireplace as well.
Okay. Yeah, we saw it in the photo, didn't we?
You saw it in the photo. Yes,
Yeah.
the big stone. Yeah, we have the same thing. But it's mostly just for our own personal preference, and we do use it quite a bit in the wintertime, and it actually allows the mini splits to not have to work to heat the home. So because it doesn't have a blower on it, it's just radiant heat, but it does work sufficiently to heat the area that, you know, that we use. So more out of preference than anything. We liked it.
Yeah.
Brett, you know, if you have a gas furnace and you have a power outage, you still don't have heat because it has fans that blow it through, and those fans are electric. So it really doesn't matter whether you have a gas furnace or electric furnace if there's a power outage.
No, that's a good point, and obviously that, you know, it's a fair point to make. Of course, the difference is when you start looking at geothermal and especially air source heat pump, and I don't want to pick on air source, I have one. But you know, it takes a lot of energy to keep those. Will chew right through a battery within a minute, and I know that from a personal experience. The battery will be gone just to get your house heated for a second. So you know, Kate, what do you have a backup strategy for your project have you thought through that at all?
Yep, I do have a power wall, so a battery wall. So yes, hopefully that'll have stored up enough. And I think also when we have power outages, those of us who might have battery backup can feed back to consumers, for example, to help them out, or with power surges, you know, if that makes sense. But it makes sense to me to do that.
Yeah, you can't feed back only because the safety, you could kill a line worker, so they have to shut your system down. Just, you know, even if you wanted to feed back, I'm not saying you could cause a problem. Your system will shut down. So but I do want to get back to that feedback question. I'm glad you mentioned it, but I wanted to bring Mark, if you're listening, if you're on, you as a passive house consultant, as a designer, you know, maybe you could speak to some of the passive solar features that should help Kate out in the instance of a winter outage.
Well, the nice thing about passive houses, like Larry shared, they're so resilient. And so if power goes out, Kate could light a few candles in each room and she'll probably be comfortable. So, you know, that's the beauty of that system. That is why it's a passive house. It can stay habitable for quite a long time. So it's just inherent in the building envelope, which is wonderful, you know, without needing special gadgets, you know, just the quality of window, the quality of wall thickness and roof thickness, just the whole, and the air tightness is really preserving whatever BTU heat is in the house before the power goes out, and it's keeping it in better than any other house in the country. And that's what passive house is all about, is, you know, the more we could keep our heat from escaping, then the less time a furnace has to run to replenish what's being lost. So that's why Passive House is really focused on the shell as being the primary place to put our design emphasis, rather than on the various technologies for the heating and cooling and water heating and such.
Hey, Brett, I would like to break in. That's actually a good segue to kind of to one of the questions I've got my eye on in the Q&A. Asking Larry to talk a little more about the dust-free issue that he's enjoying, and just, you know, the fact that you've got a tight house, and you know there's an air quality issue with that as well. People need to balance those and have a lot of questions. Could Larry talk a little bit more about how his system works and how his air is so clean in his tight house?
Sure. I do have some photos, but I don't have them quickly available to show you. The Zender system is extracting air from the bathrooms, the kitchen, the laundry room, and a food pantry that I have 24 hours a day. And it's replacing that air into first the bedrooms. I have 3 bedrooms, and then the living room, and then in a closet, a walk-in closet. So I have a continuous circulation of air. That air is filtered with a MERV 8 coming in, and then once the air goes through the enthalpy heat exchanger, it goes through a MERV 13 filter, and then the post-ERV airstream that's on its way to those bedrooms goes through a box, and it's nothing more than an insulated box that has a hinged lid, and I have a 4-inch thick, 20-inch by 12-inch carbon filter, and then right next to it, I have a 2-inch by 20-inch by 12-inch MERV 15 filter. So it's a sandwich of filters that on the way from the ERV, I have this fresh air supply that's super filtered. And then I added something, it's a company called New Calgon, and they make an ion generator, which generates positive and negative ions. It's a $300 device I bought from a local heating and air conditioning supply house. And that sends a stream of ions into the air. One of the ions that people think about often is ozone, but this does not have ozone. Ozone has some corrosive effects because it's an isotope of oxygen. So this produces something called positive and negative ions that turn volatile organic compounds into they're called hydroxyls, which is basically water and nitrogen. And so I incorporated this into my Zender system because that's my only forced air circulation system, and it's relatively low. You don't hear it running. It runs 24 hours a day. Like I said, right now I'm on low, which is 70 cubic feet of air per minute, which if anybody's familiar with the ASHRAE 62.2 standard for ventilation, for this size house, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, 2,250 square feet, the ASHRAE minimum is 65 cubic feet of air continuously when you build a house to less than 1 air exchange an hour. So at least in the 2015 code that I built this house to, the 2021 code might be a little bit different ventilation rate. So I'm only using, right now, I just checked it again, I'm using 19 watts. It changes a little bit, 17 to 19 watts, but it's filtering the air literally through 5 filters plus this ion generator. And I've heard some people say that the ion generator is kind of hocus pocus. I don't know if it is or isn't, but it was like $279. I don't think it's hurting anything. It doesn't use much electricity. It uses like 10 or 11 watts. I never shut it off. But something that's very important. So my ERV, extracting air from bathroom, kitchens, and laundry rooms, which are the source of odors, chemicals, and moisture in a house. And then after it does the enthalpy exchange to recapture that energy before the air gets extracted out of the house, it puts it back into the bedrooms in the living room. And so the air has to leave the bedroom, go out the door, around the corner, down the hallway, and into the bathroom. So it's called the cascade effect. And so my air is literally being scrubbed by the origin of the supply air to the extract air 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It makes no noise. You cannot hear it. If you put it on boost, which is in my case about 300 cubic feet of air per minute, which is way too high, a ventilation rate for this house. But if you're in the bathroom and you turn the boost on because you're taking a shower, or if you burn toast in the kitchen, you want to boost it up. You can hear the fan motor a little bit through the ducts, but not very many, because I have isolation damper. There's a silencer, we call an attenuator. So I didn't want to get too geeky, but I attribute this cleanliness. It's, energy efficiency was really my primary goal when I started building this house. And without getting dramatic, I was living in a net zero house that had formaldehyde levels that were 5 times greater than what the World Health Organization says you could live with. And I developed throat cancer, and I don't know if it came from that, but I did some drastic things to reduce that formaldehyde and VOC level. And just because of my future uncertainty, I sold that house. I've cleaned up the air with a whole house dehumidifier and a double-sized Zender unit. I ran it for 18 months and I cleaned the air out, but I made a commitment to myself to build a house that would be as toxin-free as I could. And I got rid of wood, I got rid of foam, and I got rid of carpeting. I got rid of particle board. The cabinets use CARB 2 certified plywood that has no formaldehyde, no VOC paint in the whole house. And I'm really proud to say that I'm living in a non-VOC, non-toxic house. My VOC levels are 1/20th of what my last house was. I mean, they're almost non-existent. They're like 21 nanograms per liter. My last house was 6,500 nanograms per liter. So I don't know if the Zender system is the whole answer, but I know it's a contributing factor for sure.
And you've clearly demonstrated that a very tight house can also be a very clean house if it's done properly.
Thank you.
Yeah, Larry, thank you for sharing that with us and connecting it to your house and what you did. And I really appreciate you talking about that. And really, it just goes again. It goes to show that and especially with COVID being stuck in our homes, we're working more from home. Sure, let's go build a net zero home, but we can't forget about health. We can't forget about our air quality. We need to protect our health and stop these issues. So thank you for making that apparent and sharing some of the things you're doing. I want to get with some of the remaining time we have left, just everybody to kind of wrap up a closing thought. Can people contact you if they want to learn more? Maybe tell them their information.
Brett, you should also point out you did a seminar in GreenHome Institute on air quality, and that's recorded, so they can probably find that somewhere.
Oh yeah, we do so many seminars on air quality. I mean, it's probably second to net zero because, and if not, it'll be more so. Health and comfort, I think, are much more on people's minds than energy savings, especially with us all being working from home now. Really, whether you're locked in your home still or just you're probably working from home. I know I am, so I guess I'm biased, but I'm down here. What am I breathing?
Before we finish, let me answer one. Can I answer one of the questions that was in the on the question?
Sure.
Somebody said with the incredible heat wave in Portland and Seattle, does that change net zero or the definitions of net zero, or how does that affect things? And one of the things, and Rob can probably speak far more elegantly than I on this, but generally in Michigan, a geothermal system, or the requirement for home is twice as much BTUs you needed for heat as you do for cool. So therefore the system is over-spec'd for cooling. So therefore, even if you had 110-degree temperature, the geothermal should probably handle that because it's over-spec for cooling. Cooling is never a problem in a geothermal, but Rob, maybe you want to add something to that or correct me or.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Rob.
No, you're right. You're right, Larry. It's about the number of hours in a day and runtime and occupant tolerance, right? So if I were to leave somebody in this group with kind of a closing thought from me, it would be, as you're designing your home, think about your comfort and what is comfort? What is your definition of comfort? It's different for everyone. If you're married, you know it's different for both husband and wife within the home. And so off is always better than on. And that seems logical, but when we talk about comfort and Larry, you made a good point in your home, and my home's the same way, as I can maintain temperature in tenths of degrees in an extremely tight tolerance. But in order to do that, that takes energy. And if you have a broader spectrum of what you define as your comfort level, so if there's a 10-degree swing that you're saying, I'm happy with the home being somewhere between 68 and 78, all those degrees between 68 and 78, when the home can balance its own temperature level and maintain itself without any mechanical intervention, that's energy saving opportunity. So just kind of consider that for yourself and what that means for you, and understand you can be as comfortable as you want in a net zero home, or you can reduce your cost of, energy production, buy less solar panels if you expand that range in which you're comfortable. So that would be my closing thought for today.
Thank you for that, Rob. And Kate, how about I pass it on to you? Any closing thoughts? Where can people go to learn more about your project if you're willing to share it?
I'm at a loss right now. This has just been such a great webinar, and I'm really impressed with the things other people have said. I don't think how would they reach me, you mean?
Or are you gonna help us do any education or any more information on your home as the construction completes? Maybe you can work with us on that? I don't know. I'm just
I'm happy to do that. Yeah, happy to do that. So a continuation.
Yeah, maybe we'll have everyone over when it's safe, and we'll have some snacks. I don't want to put any burden on you if you want to do a green tour.
Yeah, home parades I think will be good.
Yeah. All right, Kate. Well, thank you so much for taking your time and joining us. And Jeanette, I'll give you the last word. Just any final closing thoughts. And I know we've done plenty of information. We have a webinar on your house and a tour that's available, so anyone can check that out. But yeah, just let us know.
If anybody would want to reach out about our house, they're more than welcome to do that. You can certainly pass on our information. And I think our home tour is still on your website, isn't it? So they can look at it at any time. And I'm sure that they can reach our builder, Our Value Homes, through your website as well. But final thought, I would say that going forward in building, because we'd never built a home before, that the net zero experience has been great for us. It's met all our expectations. We would do it again in a New York second, and despite some of the shocking costs and things that you see going into it, the return on investment is just huge. So I would say go for it.
Great. Well, I want to, just in closing here before we wrap up, a huge thanks to our third annual Residential Net Zero Energy Conference sponsors, Mitsubishi Electric, Enertech, Water Furnace, Build Equinox was served to consumers in DTE Energy, and the Net Zero Build Summit. We couldn't do it without them. We really appreciate their support. And all of our planning partners who have been there for the most part from the start 3 years ago: Michigan Geothermal Energy Association, Michigan Energy Efficiency Contractors Association, Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association, Dave Dye, our Education Committee Chair with DFD Architecture, Michael Clement with Architectural Resource, and now joining us, Illinois Green. We are going to be back on the last Wednesday of September. I don't know exactly what we're going to be talking about, but this is going to be the last part of the third annual Residential Net Zero Energy Conference. So you'll see more information. Check that out. I hope you can join us. In the meantime, have a wonderful 4th of July. I really appreciate all of you coming on and all the questions, and all of our speakers. A big thanks to Jeanette, Kate, Larry, Rob, and have a great night, everyone. Take care. Be safe and well. Bye.
Thank you.
As well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.